All right, so what I'm looking at here, we've still got shadows in the details, and so that's another thing that reminds me. When I looked at some of your photos, some of them were really contrasty. Like I'm talking super contrasty, and when they are super contrasty, you'll find that you lose details in the blacks, you lose details in shadows, and you also lose details in highlights as well because there's so much contrast. And again, that's what your stupid presets will do. So guys, stay clear of the presets. Just become the purist and do it properly in a pure form, and I promise you'll stand out. So what I'm looking for here is I've got shadows, I've got details in the shadows and stuff up here in the top section. Obviously, love Andy, but dude, I've got to get rid of you. So for me, the quickest way that I can possibly do that is essentially just to do a mirror image flip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the layer up so that I can actually do that. I'm going to find the middle, and because I've shot it properly, well, almost properly, we're a little bit out here, but because I've shot it 90% of the way properly, it's centered properly and it's cropped properly, and so therefore doing this is going to be easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer. I'm going to copy this side. I'm going to make layer via copy. I'm going to go up and I'm going to flip it horizontally. There we go. And then we're going to grab this, drag it over here. And then we've got two Neils. Neil making out with Neil. Exciting prospect, except if you're Neil or Helen. All right. So now we've got the original photo and a layer over here. So what I want to do is I want to add a layer mask so that I can actually rub it out and then put it back if I notice a problem. So I'm going to zoom right in because we want to get rid of this double up of Neil. So because it's a layer mask and I'm using white, so what I'm going to need is select a brush, select the black because black hides and light and white shows. Select 100%, and then I'm just going to go through here and I'm going to rub out Neil. And this looks pretty funny because it looks like now Helen is wearing a suit. Hang on, I just want to have a play with this so it looks like Helen's wearing a suit. She's probably going to hate this, but anyway. And just get rid of Neil's shoulder there a little bit. And there we go. Now that looks like Helen's wearing a suit. Let's just zoom out just for the fun of that. And there we go. All right. All right, so let's stop being an idiot and we'll rub out Helen. So again, this is not an eraser, this is a black brush. And I'm kind of doing it relatively carefully because I don't want to go too far just in case things don't quite match up, which it looks like from the center up here. See, we've got two peaks just here and here. So what that means is it's not properly 100% in the center. So that means we need to be careful now with everything else, just to be sure. All right, cool. So there we go. We've rubbed out Helen and we've removed Andy. But what's happening now is we've got an exact duplicate and mirror image of all of this, which is kind of cool, but I don't really want it to look like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove a few bits and pieces here just so that we can see that we've got so as you can see, we're a little bit, things are a little bit out here, which I'm not too concerned about because there's a lot of darkness and a lot of shadows here, so a lot of this you're actually going to miss anyway. What's that? Oh fuck, that's my flash. See, so I've gone a little bit too far there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change my brush over here from black to white, and with white I can just put that back in just like that. All right, so I'm going to get back to black. And what's that? All right, so there's my softbox there. So we've gone a little bit mental. So I'm just going to put that back in. All right, so we can see a little bit of, whoops, Pro Photo, we don't want that. What's that? Yeah, okay, so that's my softbox. So what we're going to do is just cover that up. All right, so yes, like if you really look closely, there might be a little bit where it's out, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to notice it. What you will notice is the exact duplicates of things over here. So what I'm going to do, because I know that it's all pretty similar, and that my horizontals are pretty much right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to rub out. Sorry, I'm going to put my black brush to rub it out. Right, so I know that my horizontals are pretty much the same. All right, so I'm going to go through here and I'm just going to get rid of, what's that? That's that, so we don't want that. And we put that little bit there back and go back to our brush. All right, and then, so I'm staying underneath this line because I know that this line of the railing is pretty much equal on both sides. And if you'll notice, there's a coffee cup there, so we're going to have to get rid of that. Whoever left that there. All right, so there we go. So now I'm going to rub out that whole section so that now all our baubles and all that sort of stuff don't kind of aren't exact duplicates and don't match, because that's something that you will see. And as a judge, like, that's something that I kind of see a lot as well. And it just means that, you know, you've had the right idea, but it just hasn't been executed properly. All right. So you can see there's a little bit of reflection stuff going on here. I'm going to go back to my black brush and I'll just take that out a little bit. Back to my white brush, and it's going to be a little bit careful going through here now. And pretty much all I'm doing is just putting back this side of the Christmas decorations, because I don't want it to look like an exact duplicate, because then it looks unfinished. All right, so now this sign, the exit sign, we need to get rid of that as well. All right, so now we've got our cool duplicate. It all looks pretty good. This side is different to this side, so that, you know, it doesn't look like we've copied it. The only thing that we've spotted now is down here. So see, we've got two twin peaks, so we're going to get rid of one of those, and I've gone a little bit too far there. All right, so we're going to go black brush to put that back. There we go. And because it's quite dark, like, you can't really see very much. So I'm not too wildly concerned about the extreme detail there. So if we hide the other side, that's what we've got left. Black brush over here. Yep. So I just want to get rid of that bit, get rid of this bit, get rid of that. And because I'm not a massive fan of hard lines, I'm just going to rub that little line out, because you can't really see much. The one up here, I'm going to leave that because I know that the internals up here look good. So that's about where I'm going to leave that. So contrary to what everyone says, I'm going to flatten that now, because now there's a couple of other things I need to do. So we need to get rid of the coffee cups. Probably should have done that before I flipped it, because it's a pain in the ass. But I'm going to do this the relative hard way, and I'm just going to clone it, because I think if I try to do it with generative fill, it's probably going to ruin it, and it'll cause more trouble than it's worth. So where's this one over here? So exactly the same both sides. It's super easy. Like it's not a difficult fix. You've just got to be a little bit precise, is I guess the word I'm looking for. And because it's quite dark, like you're not going to really see that. So, all right. Next thing is we want to get rid of the sign, because this sign is a distraction. So with this, I'm going to see what generative fill does with this, because it should be a relatively easy fill. So let's try generative fill. I'm not going to give it a prompt. I'm just going to see what it does. And bear in mind too, with generative fill, for those who haven't used it, it's going to give you 3 options. And I reckon that's my option there. I'm going to go with that one. It's not perfect, but I'm going to flatten that. And I don't mind the imperfection of it. Like that's not really concerning for me. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to get rid of the shine. I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to do it from both sides so that it's totally plausible and believable. So we've got a few little lines here, a couple of little texture lines and stuff which I want to get rid of. So we'll do that. We'll do that. Get rid of that. There we go. So we've got a reflection. Our sign's gone. It's not too bad. It looks a little bit brighter there, but we can sort of go through and sort that later on. All right. So I'm potentially not going to do a whole lot more with this, guys, because it's just going to the venue. So I don't need to really go mental with it. What I will do though is I'll just darken a few things down. Like I'm not too concerned about the lights being blown out, because again, it's not an award photo. It doesn't really matter. If it was going to be an award photo or something like that, what you would want to do is you would want to probably grab these lights down here that are exposed a bit better and flip them and put them up the top here so that they're not completely blown out. But again, not too concerned about it. So what I'm going to do is I've got a few kind of actions and stuff here. There was a few that I put on your USBs and stuff for you, but the first one I'm going to run is just my I'm going to run my image pop, which kind of gives it back a little bit of contrast, and does rip a little bit of color out, but it gives it a bit more of a pop, which you'll see. You guys don't have this one because this one was bought, so therefore I can't give it to you. If I do, I'm in Strife. So as you can see by this one, if I turn it on and off, it's darkened things down quite a bit, and it has taken away a bit of the detail in the shadows. So I want to be a little bit careful of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to knock that back a little bit, just to about there. And what we also have is a gradient map here, so that I can go through and I can take parts of this darkness out if I want to, which I'm going to do now because it's a bit dark. Whoops, sorry, clone stamp, wrong one. So I'm going to use, because it's a white mask, I'm going to use a black brush to remove it. So I'm just going to rub out some of the darkness from the top here. And as you can see, like it's hard to see, but there's a little bit of detail and stuff that comes back. So I don't want to take out too much of it, but again, I don't want to be losing all the details in the blacks. Now, I'm not too concerned about down here. I will just go over a little bit, and I will run over all the lights with this, because by doing that, I'm taking away a bit more of the highlight. There we go. And I think I'm going to leave Neil and Helen the way they are. Cool, so we're good there. So I'm done with that. Shit, where's my flatten image? There we go. So that's where we're at. Now, there's a few little distracting points that I can see. This bit of blue up here, that's distracting. I'm going to try and darken these lights down here a little bit. There's a bit of shine on these poles. I kind of want to darken those and darken these areas up here just a little bit, so that it brings your eye more towards Neil and Helen. And also these lights are helping us do that. So the way I'm going to do that is with dodge and burn. I think on your USB, I think in the actions that I gave you, I think there was an action called yin and yang, which is very similar to this. So have a go at that. So with this action, it gives me 2 layers with masks. One's a burn, one's a dodge. Again, they're a black mask, so in order to see what the results are, I need to change my brush to white. If I just go to 100% and I show you what let me show you what dodge does. Boom. So that's 100% on dodge, and it really brightens things up, which is good in some regards, but not in others. So I don't want all that brightness, so I'm going to take that away. We want to go to burn first, because I want to take out some of the highlights. So I'm just going to go to about 45% opacity, which is actually I'll go to 40. So 40 is about where I kind of want to be, and then I'm just going to brush a bit of the darker kind of stuff in here. As you can see, like, it's not incredibly detailed. I'm going to brush it over these lights as well, but it's not really going to do anything. I want to brush it over this part, and I'm just, because I'm on 40%, I've got to go over it a few times to make it quite dark. And again, just over this side too, and then over here, over this one. So as you can see, guys, it's not incredibly detailed. Like, I'm not spending hours and hours on little sort of intricate details. So I'm going to darken that back a little bit, darken these back a touch because they are a little bit distracting, and then I'm going to run the brush over all these lights, which will darken them back a little bit. There we go, that's cool. And then we might just put a little bit of dark there, a little bit of dark there, and just a touch there. So actually, no, I don't like that last bit. I'm going to rub that out, and that bit, because we want to see this a little bit, so that we can actually see that it's a reflection. Cool. So Neil and Helen look fairly well lit, because we've done a good job in lighting them. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to darken around them a little bit, just to highlight them and bring them out a bit more, because you want your eye to go to them, and not to be lost in the Christmas trees. So I'm darkening them back a little bit, darkening these roof parts a little bit. We're going to leave this one as it is because it's in the center. And so it's a little bit dark, a little bit lighter behind Neil there, so I can darken that back. All right, and then look, I reckon we're pretty good there, guys. I just want to make sure I've got no darkening over this part. Cool. All right, so now I want to go to dodge, because we're going to stay at 40. Neil and Helen's faces, I think, are quite well lit, so I don't want to light them up anymore. I think we could just add a touch to Helen's dress, but then what I want to do is I want to add a bit of brightness to this wreath here, because it's in the center and it's going to draw your eye to them. So we're going to add a little bit to there, and these bright lights, I want to add a bit to them too. There we go. And then for the star up here, I'm going to brighten the star up on both. And then when I've been brightening that star, I've just noticed the smoke detector here. So we want to get rid of that. So I'm going to go back down to my background layer, and we're going to just grab the clone tool. I'm sure we all know how to use this, but I'm just gonna actually select this area. And I'm still at 45%. Whoops, so let's change that. All right, that's that one gone. Let's come over here to this one. That one's gone. Then you see this little white part here? Not a fan of that either. So come back over here. This little white bit, let's get rid of that. Done. All right. So our subject is lit. They're lit quite nicely. I'm pretty happy with that. Just going to go back to Dodge now, and I want to illuminate, take it back to about 40, and just want to illuminate, whoops, get my brush back, 40, and I just want to illuminate a little bit more of this. There we go, and I'm just going to add a little bit of light in there to that now. Actually, no, I might take that away again and just leave that one there. All right. So let's go back to the burn, because these still are a little bit bright. Whoops. So I'm going to darken them down a little bit. Darken that down a touch more. Down a little bit more. So whatever, because this is a flipped sort of image, we want to do the same to both sides. All right. And we've still got detail up around here, but I want a little bit more. So I'm just going to go back to my burn tool, and I'm going to make sure that's on black so that we're not burning anything unnecessarily. No, that's good. So now I'm going to go to my Dodge, go to white because I want to see a bit more brightness up there, and I'm just going to add a little bit more brightness up here, just in these darker areas. Cool. So I'm happy with that. I reckon that's about us for this shot. I'm looking at it and I'm seeing these lights, and they are kind of pissing me off a little bit because they're so bright. So let's go down the rabbit hole of changing them. All right, let's see what happens. This could work or it could be shite. All right. So in order to change these, I can use these because it's a mirror image and they're exposed quite well. Whether it'll actually be an exact fit, I don't know, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, I'm going to layer it via copy, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to transform, flip vertical, and I'm going to grab them, drag them up, and see where the dust settles. So what I can do is just reduce that to 50% opacity, and then we can move this around just to see how close we are. See, we're pretty close. What does need to happen is we just need to make a couple of little adjustments here, which is going to be a little bit difficult because they're all a little bit off. All right. So I'm going to go to adjust a little bit more this way. Right, so this one here, the top right and top left, I think are pretty good. So I'm going to save that as it is. I'm going to give it a layer mask. I'm going to put it back to 100%. Then what I'm going to do is come to this layer. I'm going to grab my select tool, and because it's a highlight against shadow, it's going to be fairly easy to select. There we go. One of those, and select that too. Cool, pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a layer, of those two, and we will delete that layer. There we go. So now our lights are looking a lot better and they're pretty much duplicates. So now what we're going to do, I'm just going to check those just to make sure they look good. I'm going to select this layer, add a mask. So if you're going to rub anything out or anything like that, do it as a mask. So therefore, if you rub too far or you take something out you shouldn't have, you can always put it back. So I'm pretty good with these. You can see a bit of a line around there, which I'm not super happy with. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to 100. I'm just going to have a soft brush, and I'm just going to run around the outside because that would still be plausible. And I'm going to take away that line. There we go. Cool. How's this one look? Yeah, so we've still got a little bit of an issue with that one. So again, I'm just going to run around it. Now it is a light, and you know, light moves in different directions, so anything can be plausible. Not too concerned. So when we go back and have a look, like they're not too bad. I'm okay with that. So what I'm going to do is flatten, and now this one, see, now we have that bright white around, and just looking at it, I'm thinking it's upsetting me a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my brush, I'm going to go to darken. So what darken does is if you want to darken an area, select the color that you're after to darken it to, and then what it's going to do is just going to go over and darken that lightened area. So that was a little bit rough, but I'm kind of okay with it. And we'll go to this part here and just darken that back. And it's kind of a similar sort of color. And again, they're super small, like, so you're really not gonna see this too much. It's not gonna be a huge issue. Just grab this one as well. Now, I wouldn't normally spend this long on a photo, but you know, this is a cool one, so we want to make it good. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to go copy, edit, flip vertical, and drag these ones up, which is probably what we should have done with the first ones in the first place. Whoops. There we go. Now, as you can see, they are a little bit off. This one's good. This one needs a bit of adjusting. I'm going to bring that in. And I'm going to make them a little bit fatter. That way a little bit, and we'll just make a little adjustment here with this one. And there we go, they're done. We might just adjust this one a little bit more. Stretching it out just a little bit. Cool, done. All right, I'm not going to do anything with those, so they're good. Cool, and we'll flatten that. And now, because these ones down here are quite bright and substantially brighter than these ones, what I'm going to do is actually go back. I'm going to select this layer. I'm going to use this layer that we've just used. I'm going to duplicate it. We're going to drag it down, and I'm going to make it smaller, and we're going to see if that works, which it's looking like it might. So what I want to do is just get one in the right spot first, and then we can see where the dust settles with the other one. Cool. So left hand side looks good, right hand side is drunk. All right, so let's bring this across. Cool. That's going to change this side a little bit, so we're going to bring this back in. All right, both of them kind of look all right. Just going to do some little adjustments. That's fine. Cool. And one more up here. Like, it's so small you're not going to see it, but you know, when you zoomed right in. There we go. So there's our lights looking good. You know, as good as they're going to get. Obviously there's still a blowout here. If you really wanted to go hardcore, you could copy the texture and put the texture back in. We could try and do it with our patch tool. See what happens here. So content aware patch. That's a galloping problem. What about generative fill? See how we go. This is probably not going to go too great, just because it's such a small area and it's quite intricate, but we'll see. Oh, look at that. Generative fill wins the day. That's better. Let's go that one. All right, so this is the problem. Now that we've gone down this rabbit hole, we need to do it with all of them. So using the power of generative fill, let's grab all of them and see what it does with all of them. I don't know if this is going to work. It's gone all right with the first one, but that was just one. Now I'm going to load it up and see if it can do all of them, and we'll see how we go for these top ones. Generative fill, generate. Now, when it comes to generative fill with stuff like this, normally in awards this is allowed, because you're not introducing anything that wasn't there. What you're doing is fixing and bringing detail back, which was there. If you're going to add a sky or adding something like that, then not allowed. But in this case, we're just fixing. And as you can, first one looked a bit shabby. Last one's a bit shabby. Cool. Look. I'm not in love with how that looks, because I think we kind of overloaded it a bit. So what I'm going to do is delete that layer, and I'm just going to try and do this one with generative fill, and we'll see how one at a time goes. Yeah, that's better one at a time. That looks a bit weird. That one's a bit closer, so let's roll with that. And then this is still a bit bright, so if we just grab our darken brush, select an area that's a little bit darker, so probably that, and then we can just paint that in. Cool, I'm good with that. I'm not sure if I want to really try these ones with generative fill or not. Let's give one a go. and just see, because I don't want to waste too much time, because it's not an award photo, it's not anything like that. Now, the reason why I'm saying it's not an award photo is because it doesn't take a lot of skills and ability to put them in penguin pose and light this. It's not something that's really challenging to do. So, and for that regard, like it's looks nice, great for the couple, great for sale and that sort of stuff, but it's just not really strong enough to be like an award photo as such. So as we can see, Generative Fill has done a good job on that one. So I think it's very much a one at a time job. So I'm just going to power through these and I'll get these top ones done. Don't think I'm going to bother with the bottom ones. What I may just do is just darken them down more, but we'll see how this goes. Yeah, cool. Flatten. Let's grab this one. Like, don't be afraid to use Generative Fill in a situation like this, guys, because it's, as you can see, it's bloody good. Sometimes it surprises me. Sometimes it's a galloping horror story. But in this case, like that's looking pretty good. Like you can't really complain with that. And we'll just get this one. Cool. Really like how Generative Fill has helped those. They look cool now. This one looks a little bit dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my brush and I'm going to go to lighten now. And I'm going to zoom in on this one because I want it to look very similar to this one. So I'm going to brush 30-something%. So I'm going to find a light part, which is about there. And then I'm just going to give this a little bit of lighting up, which looks better. There we go. So it's only a little bit. Doesn't need to be much. So looking at these bottom lights now, in a real photo that wasn't adjusted, these lights would be darker than these ones. As you saw from the initial photo, see how these are very bright and these are darker? Because this was reflected with a black piece of acrylic, it would mean that these are darker than these. So to keep it photorealistic, what we now need to do is, I wanted to leave these, but because it's not going to look real now, we need to fix these too. So again, back to Generative AI, and we're just going to go one at a time. So it didn't do a great job doing them all at once. So we'll just go one at a time. Cool, that one looks good. And it's a bit darker than the last one. Oh, it's a bit darker than the one above it, which is good. All right, number 2. So as I said, guys, I wouldn't normally go this deep, but because we've kind of gone down a rabbit hole a little bit and I fixed the lights at the top, we need to maintain its photorealism and fix the ones at the bottom as well. So that one's cool. Select. So once I've done this, there's really not much more that I want to add to this, because it's only going to, I guess, detract from what we've got. Yep. Let's go this one. So what I would do is challenge you to look at the photo and go, does this really need any more? Because I know that in early in my career, I would sit here and look at the photo and go, oh, if I did this and did that and did this and change a whole lot of things and added stuff to it, and it just made it to the point that it actually didn't look real. And what I was doing was just more work for myself that just didn't even really look real in the first place. So, like, ask yourself the question, is this finished or does it need more? Like, if I add something to it, is it going to ruin it? And I think you'll probably find that you'll go, you know what? It's good as it is. I'm not don't really want to do anything more to it. So what I'm seeing now is that these bottom ones, because we grabbed these and put them up here, these are darker than these. And even with generative AI, these are not looking dark enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten image, and I'm going to select that one and select that one. And I'm going to get rid of this bit at the top on both. And then we're going to do the exact opposite that we did before. Layer via copy, flip vertical, and then I'm going to grab these and we're going to take them down here. And they should fit relatively well. We've just got to expand them back out. So again, I just want to get one to fit properly first, which, because we've adjusted them a bit for up the top, they're potentially not going to fit perfectly at the bottom. So we'll just make a few adjustments so that they do. Cool, that one looks good. So now that that one's good, I want to go over to this one, and this one's drunk. So we're going to drag that across. And go to bicubic again and just pull it straight. So that may have changed this one now. No, we're still good. All right. Cool. There we go. So there is our lights sorted and looking good, so that we've actually still got detail in the lights. This one here is still a bit bright, like that sticks out to me a little bit, so I'm going to go to my darken brush, 34%. I'm going to select a darker area and I'm just going to darken that back a little bit. Need a little bit more. Oop, too much. Cool, darken that one back a little bit, darken that back, darken that back, that one, that one. So they're all about the same color, so I can just go over all of them. All right, cool. So now top half looks good. These lights here at the bottom are still a bit bright for my liking, because they would be darker because it's reflected in black acrylic. So what I'm going to do now, I want to do this the right way. So what we might do is go back to dodge and burn, and we'll click on that again. So when I run this, it doesn't affect the photo, it only affects it when I actually brush it in. So I'm going to go to normal, I'm going to go to 100%, and I'm going to brush that on. I'm going to brush that on, brush that on. Now we'll change the color of them a little bit, but I'm good with that. Cool. So that looks more realistic now because they're darker at the bottom, which is what we were aiming for. Cool. So now, because there's still a few little details that are missing in the shadows and stuff like that, I'm going to now take a bit of contrast out. So when you look at a photo, your eye is naturally drawn to the brightest part of the photo with the most contrast. So we want to take a bit of contrast out so you can see a bit more detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer. I'm going to go up. I would normally make this layer a luminosity layer, so it's only adjusting the luminosity. But when you do that, the contrast, when you remove contrast, it doesn't have any effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to adjustments, brightness, contrast. And so on this layer, I'm going to rip out contrast. See how when I rip out contrast, it brings a lot of detail back in the shadows. And conversely, adding contrast, it takes away all the details and it just looks nasty. So what I'm going to do is I'm pretty much going to pull pretty much all of the contrast out. I'm going to go, okay. And then I'm going to add a mask to that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken this back a little bit. So because I've taken contrast out, you can still see all the detail in the contrast. Because the contrast has come out, it's brightened up. So if I use levels to darken it, if I darken it back down, it's basically adding contrast back and darkening it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit back in the mid-tones. So darken it back in the mid-tones a little bit. And I'm going to take out a little bit of the highlight level there. All right, so essentially what I've done there, it's very subtle, but I've taken a fair bit of contrast out of the lights and I've taken a fair bit of contrast out of the whole thing. So what I can do now is I'm going to go back up, brightness, contrast again, and I'm going to pull a little bit more contrast out. So we can see yet more. There we go. Cool. So now we've got quite a, you'd probably call it a flatter looking image because you can see all the detail up here, but your couple are flat and everything else is flat. So now, and that's because we've taken so much contrast out, but because I've got a layer here and a layer mask, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the layer mask and I'm going to go to 100% opacity, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint Neil and Helen back in as the original photo looked. So what we've essentially done is I've taken the contrast out of the whole photo and I've added the contrast back into Neil and Helen. So as you can see now, if we zoom out, Neil and Helen are a lot more, your eye is drawn to them a lot more. So now, because we've taken contrast out, the lights look a bit sad, all these lights look a little bit sad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go keep it on 100% and I'm going to paint these lights back in. And in painting these back in, it gives us back a whole lot more depth and dimension because it's not all flat and looking yuck anymore. And the lights are bright and shiny and cool looking. I'm going to add it back in for the Christmas trees. Add it back in there. So now I don't want to add it fully back in for the lights because I don't want these lights up the top to be overpowering. These lights down the bottom here are fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 50% and I'm going to put 50% back on that one and that one. Basically 50% back on all of them. Now, it's not quite enough, so I'm going to go another 50% on the first two. Go a little bit more. One there, one there, one there, one there. Cool. And I'm good with that. I might just put a little bit back in this bottom one, but that's it. That's us, guys. So what we've done is we've taken highlights away, we've brought the contrast back into the shadows, brought the detail back into the shadows by removing all the contrast, and now your eye is far quicker drawn to Neil and Helen, and there's really not much more that I kind of want to do to this. What I might just do is a bit of a selective sharpen, just to sharpen a few kind of details. I'm not going to go mental with it because it's, given the nature it's being shot at, I think 1000 ISO, like it can be a little bit grainy. But at the same time, I've got a frame soften sort of scenario here, but I kind of don't want to soften the frame too much. But I might just do a little bit because that'll give us a little bit of depth and dimension between foreground and background and stuff. So what we've got is I've got a sharpen action here. So I need to go to a white brush, and I don't want to like crazy sharpen it. So I'm just going to go to like 50%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen from about the midsection here forward. And I'm just going to sharpen this stuff, all the wreath and that sort of stuff. There we go. I'm going to sharpen a light. Sharpen the lights a bit. And then I'm going to come into Neil and Helen. Now watch what happens on Helen's dress. Like if I go to 100%, watch this. See how it really, really sharpens hard and brings detail, like intense detail back in. That's a little bit too much because it starts looking not real. So if you're ever not sure, just go way too far and then back it back. But because I've already done some work here at 50%, I can't back the layer back. So I'm just going to go with where I think is going to be good, which is about 60%. And I'm going to put in Helen's hair. I'm going to add a little bit to her gown. Right. And this is all in one mouse depression because I don't want to go over it at 60%. I'm also going to grab a bit of Neil's beard and Neil's hair, and I want to sharpen that up. And I'm going to sharpen Neil's eye and Helen's eye, Neil's mouth and a little bit of Helen's mouth. And I reckon that's looking good. They're looking nice and sharp. Because they're on the same plane as this wreath, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 50% again over this wreath. Keep that sharp. Add a little bit here on the rails, and then what we've got, these rails up here are on the same plane. So let's add a little bit in there. These ones are out because they're on a different plane. This stuff up here is on the same plane. So just look at what's on the same plane, guys, and sharpen that. Because what that'll do is it'll give you depth and dimension. So these parts here are on the same plane. So I'm only at 50%, so I'm not going a crazy sharpen. All right, a little bit in there, a little bit over here, and our books are on a similar plane as well. And I want to see a bit more of the books, so I'm going to go over the books to sharpen those. Cool. So if we look at that, we've brought back a whole lot of detail, and it's looking pretty good. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to flatten that. And now I've written an action which is a light frame soften, which is kind of like a little bit of noise reduction and other stuff added in, but it's very light. So I'm going to play that. And what that's going to do is if I zoom in, you can see that it's softened everything. So when I turn it off, sharp, soft. See the difference there? So I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to invert it so that you can't see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint it into a few areas that I think would be photorealistic for that. And I'm only going to leave it at 50%. So because we're a little bit blurry on the edges here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to soften these edges a bit. Here, soften there. And under here, I'm going to soften pretty much all of that. Yeah. These corner parts here, soften those a little bit because they're on a different plane. Maybe soften a little bit in here. Cool. And then down there, and then I'm going to take this away, and I'm going to just bring a little bit of these back. Done. So guys, that's very much us. you would have a look over the frame and see what you can see, if there's anything that sticks out. There's nothing that's too distracting. The only thing I've spotted now is this blue section up the top, up here, because everything else is brown and this is blue. And it's just a reflection from when Andy was holding the light. So I don't like it because it's blue and it's distracting, and it's different from everything else. So essentially what I need to do is just take that back to the right color. So I'm going to do it very basically. I think I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to feather it. 100 pixels should be enough. And then I'm going to make a layer of that. Layer by copy, because you always want to make a layer in case you stuff it up. And then I'm going to go to my hue saturation, and I'm going to see if I can take it to a close color. Okay, that's relatively close. It's still not quite right, but I'm kind of okay with it. So because it's dark and I want to add a brown to it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to overlay on my brush. I'm going to select like a mid-range kind of brown, and I'm going to paint that over just like that. And there we go, it's gone. And we're looking good. So now the other thing I could do, if I really wanted to add more that wasn't there, I guess, is where the overlays come in. Now, because there's quite nice lighting here on Helen and Neil from Andy holding the light, it could be construed by the lighting up here that the light is coming from above down, which would mean that this part that we just fixed, if we left that, it would be realistic. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to try something just to see if it'll work. So this may not work, but we'll have a look. So I'm going to go to my regular, I've got a folder called regular overlays, and in this is like rainbow, snow, smoke, like all these different kind of overlays and that sort of stuff. So I've got a light rays folder, and in here we've got a whole lot of different light rays and stuff. You know, I just want to find something that might work, because I'm thinking about putting a light ray from the top coming down, but it may or may not work. The thing is, it's kind of got to be symmetrical, because the rest of the photo is symmetrical, which can pose a little bit of a problem because light rays aren't normally symmetrical. That is, but it's too much. There's one more I'm thinking might work. That one. All right. So I'm going to grab that, drag it on, boom. Cool. So see, we've got that light ray there, and I'm like, this could work. So if I drag that up to there and drag that down, spread it a little bit. Now it's still a bit hot, it's still a bit bright up here, and it's not totally photorealistic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it and drag it up more and drag that down a bit. Drag that down, drag that up. So it's going to be quite subtle. So what I might do is just reduce the opacity of that layer that we had before. Rasterize this layer so that I can adjust it.
And there's kind of a bit of a light sort of scenario, but it's a bit wide at the top. I'm not totally convinced. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Distort, and I'm going to pull it in at the top. -7.3. I'm going to bring it to there. Maybe just a little bit more. So what that's doing is just bring it in a bit at the top, and then I can grab it and drag it down a little bit more. So as you can see, like it's super finicky, but kind of want it to be real. If we're going to do it, like, you want it to be real, you want it to look real, because there's nothing worse than looking at an awesome photo and someone's done something to it and it doesn't look real and it's just there. So I'm going to save that there. So there's an option, and that could be completely plausible, because the lighting coming in is quite warm. The lighting on them looks like it could be coming from that direction. This is still on a normal blend mode. So if we went to a different blend mode, normal, screen. So the different blend modes obviously do different things. I'm more of a fan of that lighter color blend mode. So I reckon I'm going to leave it like that, but I'm just going to make it a little bit more subtle by, oh no, so the blend mode ruins that. So let's go back to normal, and oh yes, okay, can't do that. Problem solving 101, here we go. All right, so I can take, see, I can take a bit of the intensity out of it, but it changes color when I do that. So I'm still going to do it. There we go, use it like that. Now, what do we think? Does that look real? Are we happy with that? Do we take it off? I kind of like it. I might just reduce it a little bit, just so it's not as crazy. It does allow you to see more detail up here as well, and you can see that there's what appears to be some light coming in from the top. Kind of like it, so I'm just going to move it down a little bit more. Where are we going? It's kind of not quite exactly right after I adjusted it, so I want to go that way. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to add a layer there, a layer mask, I mean, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to rub out this light ray on Helen and Neil, because you wouldn't see the light ray on them at the front, and there's not very much, but I'm just going to rub it out. Now you would see the light ray going over this area, so we don't want to kind of rub any of that out. Basically, where you wouldn't see it is sort of on all this stuff down here. So we'll get rid of that, get rid of it on Helen and Neil, and just going to take it away a little bit more. There we go. Very subtle, but you can still see there's some light there. Flatten. And guys, that's it. I like that. Not going to faff anymore with it. Like I just think it looks good. You can see all the detail and everything. You know, the lights look good. Helen and Neil look good. Yes, it's penguin pose, but it's simple but beautiful. So yeah, let's file, save, and we're done.